I'll be going to the combine on Wednesday. Susie will be sitting in the chair Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll zoom in every now and then just to tell you what's up, what's going on in Indianapolis, and what it is it's just it's the annual re-kick to the NFL season. The off season is going down in full swing, and there's lots to talk about. So when I reach out to Albert Breer to say, hey, would love to have you on, and he's just like, well, is it okay if I do it from Logan Airport? My answer is absolutely. Just make sure you pick me up in Us magazine so we can see who does it just like me. You know what I mean? And I believe he's just completed doing that.
$12 water.
After getting, his $12 water,
Yeah.
Maybe a pretzel. Although you don't strike me as a pretzel guy, Albert. Are you a pretzel guy?
I'm not a big pretzel guy. We have a Dunkin' Donuts over here because it is Boston.
Of course.
That's within sight.
Obviously.
And Hudson News, so I can get your Us magazine there.
That's right.
Yeah, get your Us magazine there.
Pick me up in Us. Let me know.
Yeah.
And hand it to me in front of everybody at the combine, and it'll spark questions, as always is.
Good conversation piece. It definitely would be.
So, what in your estimation is the biggest question going into the scouting combine? Do you think?
I mean,
Albert?
you're talking about like NFL in general, or just the college?
You name it.
Kids?
You name it.
I think the quarterback carousel is really what it is, and I think the part of this is driven by the fact that there are a lot of teams that don't view there being many answers in this year's draft class at the position, and so if you're not wild about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, and just about every team I've talked to has said the first three guys last year, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May, would be the #1 overall pick this year. So if you're not wild about the idea of Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart, then you're looking at the veteran market. And I think as unsettled as Matthew Stafford's situation is, that's something that I think, comes to a critical point this week with everybody in one place. Where does Aaron Rodgers fit into all of this? How does Sam Darnold play into all of this? Russell Wilson. There's actually like a fair amount of veteran names out there. And in my mind, at least, the big domino is Matthew Stafford and what happens with him. And once that's settled, I think then we see some other pieces maybe start to come into place. So
then let's hit it, because I just finished up the first hour of the show saying that every now and then there's just an NFL story where I don't get it. And Matthew Stafford and the Rams parting ways would be one of those. Like, I don't get it. We're obviously, the team that came closest to beating the Eagles in the playoffs were the Rams. And Stafford doesn't appear to be slowing down. He appears to be even getting better with age. And and why would he want to leave the Rams too? So what is this? What is going on right now, Albert?
The first couple things I want to establish here. I don't think he wants to leave Southern California. I think he really likes living in Southern California. I think he really likes playing for McVay. I think that relationship is still on really solid ground. This is about the contract, and it goes back to last year. They had a 6 months negotiation that really didn't end in a solution. It ended in a Band-Aid. He got a $5 million raise on paper, but that $5 million was only borrowed money from future years. So $4 million from 25 and $1 million from 26. And, when a team does that with a player, it's basically an acknowledgement. We're going to be back at the negotiating table a year from now because this player is not going to play for this lower number. Play for the lower number, then you didn't get a raise at all. So there was that acknowledgement that they would revisit things. When they removed the guaranteed money from 25 last summer. And, I think the complications that existed last year still exist. I think the biggest thing you want to look at here, Rich, is timelines and where the teams are and where the sides are. And Matthew Stafford's 37 years old and everything's about right now for Matthew Stafford. He's been through a lot physically. The quarterback market has once again gone way past what he's making. There are 9 quarterbacks now making over $50 million per year, and rightfully so. He feels like he should be in that group of quarterbacks that's making over that number. On the other side, you've got the Rams who are looking at it and saying, okay, well, we've got a younger team now, and we're the second youngest team in football. And we're building around Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams and Kobe Turner and Byron Young and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and all these great young players that Les Snead and Sean McVay have gotten there. And do we go all in at $50 million with a guy when we may not be sure he's going to play a second year, a third year on whatever the new contract is? And that's what causes you to look around a little bit. If another team is willing to swoop in and give you a first round pick, now maybe you look at it and you say, is Aaron Rodgers willing to come to Los Angeles on a discounted rate? And then he's our 1 year answer. Instead of Stafford being our 1 year answer, we save all this money. And oh, by the way, we get all these picks as part of the exchange. It's, I think, another example of the Rams looking at things a little bit differently than other teams do. I think it's a result of Matthew Stafford looking at it and saying, I've only got so many more years to earn left, and I should be making what I'm worth. And, again, I think just the timelines of the two sides are in different places. The Rams forever were this win now machine, like we'll do whatever it takes. We'll move any assets around to win right now. That's what Matthew Stafford came into in 2021. It's an organization in a different spot right now.
So what's the timeline to get something decided, right? Is it the new league year, Albert?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Well, there's I believe a roster bonus. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's a roster bonus that I think is due in the middle of March. That is sort of the and I think I don't think it's even like that costly. I think it might be $5 million. But it's something like if you're the Rams, you don't want to pay out, whatever that roster bonus is. You don't want to pay that out if he's not going to be on your team this year. So, I mean, for that reason, that's sort of a deadline that sits in there. And you also, if you're the Rams, hey, if you're not going to be our quarterback this year, well, we want to be in on Aaron Rodgers, on Sam Darnold. We need to figure out what we're going to do with Jimmy Garoppolo, who Sean McVay really likes, by the way. That's sort of where they are. So I would say, it's not like it's a hard deadline in the middle of March, but I'd say you want to get it done by the middle of March. And really, this week is the time to do it, because this is the week when you might have a cup of coffee with Sam Darnold's agent. You might sit down with Aaron Rodgers' agent and discuss all of these things, So this is a critical week, I'd say, for Stafford and for the Rams to figure out where they're at going into 2025.
Have numbers been exchanged and thus deemed by either party not seeing eye to eye on that, and thus in Stafford's shopping, allowed to shop? What's the scoop?
So here's what's interesting about it. I know Tom mentioned that on your show,
yep.
Right? On Friday, right? Mm-hmm. That he has permission. He's had permission for 2.5 weeks now. He got permission from the Rams to go talk to other teams during Super Bowl week. So they've had a lot of time to look at this and gauge his value. And, so the teams you'd expect, the Giants, the Steelers, the Browns, the Raiders, are in that mix. Now, I don't know what each team offered. I'm sure some teams were probably short of the $50 million number. What I can say is, coming out of that, I think he felt more resolute that $50 million, that he should be in that class. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to hold a gun to the Rams' head and say, you got to give me $50 million or I'm out of here. But $27 million, which is where he's at in cash for 2025, is not close to 50, So the Rams have to get a hell of a lot closer, at least, I think, to work this out. And, again, that's sort of the risk in letting him go out and take a look, is you let him go take a look, he might get an answer that you don't like. And my understanding, again, is that he came out of this with more resolve that his worth is in that range where the top 9 quarterbacks are for 2025.
Well, I'll tell you what, Albert, if this doesn't get done, and I'm Rodgers or Darnold or Kirk Cousins, if I'm sitting on the bench in Atlanta, name the quarterback. I'd want to be the guy in Los Angeles. Send me to the Rams. Yeah. Certainly if you're Rodgers, my goodness gracious,
lives in Malibu.
Not just that though. You're pushing 41, and you get to finish with the Rams with McVay and Puka, and maybe if Kupp isn't there, then maybe Devontae comes there too. Devontae wants to be on the West Coast according to all the the narratives. I mean, my goodness, if you're Darnold also, you just blossomed under Kevin O'Connell. Well, we all know where the tree is.
Yep.
It's McVay.
And he's from LA too.
This is it. I mean, what an opportunity this would be for anybody, including Stafford, I might add.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I do think the Rams, they know what they have to sell.
Yeah.
They have a lot to sell, and oh, by the way, if you're Kirk Cousins, we'll throw another name out there, you're coming on the league minimum. And now all of a sudden the Rams have all this cash to spend that maybe they didn't have before. You know what I mean? So now they can go be aggressive around Kirk Cousins while maintaining that young core. It's just, again, it's a different way of answering the question, but it's interesting to think about, because we shouldn't forget how good Stafford is, and that Matthew Stafford had them in the red zone to beat the Eagles in Philadelphia in a snowstorm.
Yeah.
And we saw what the Eagles did to the Commanders, and we saw what the Eagles did to the Chiefs. So Matthew Stafford had them there, and coming back against that defense that gave Patrick Mahomes so many issues. So on one hand, you look at it and you say, well, why would you walk away from that if you're Stafford? On the other hand, it's not just one player that was there, it was the whole team that was there. So that could be an attractive situation for another quarterback as well, especially when you consider, again, if you're Rodgers willing to take less, or your Cousins who comes in on the minimum because the offset, you might say to yourself, wow, I can go play for that team and they're going to have room to spend around me. Sign me up for that.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show, getting set to fly off to Indianapolis within the hour to head to the Combine. And I've seen you work rooms and hallways, Albert. And I understand, you mentioned the quarterback class coming in, and its relation to the free agent market. Outside of that, what's the first answer you're going to want answered when you see a decision makers in the Combine and you work a room and you're working a hallway? What are you looking to get an answer to, Albert?
What position is Travis Hunter going to play?
Okay, go for it.
I just think he's the most interesting draft product. I've covered the league 20 years. This will be my 18th Combine. I think he's the most interesting player to come into the NFL in my time covering it. I did a big column that went up this morning previewing the class and the Combine, and I had our mutual friends, Daniel Jeremiah and Todd McShay, as the voices in there. DJ compared Travis Hunter as a receiver to Devontae Smith and as a corner to Darius Slay. Todd McShay compared Travis Hunter to Garrett Wilson as a receiver. So, you think about how rare that is, right? think about that, that he could be that good a player on both sides of the ball. So, I think going into this, I think most teams look at him and say, we'll have him as a corner and we'll package him on defense, which, by the way, is how Colorado used him. Colorado played him full-time on offense, but he was doing his meeting time, his practice time. All of that was on defense. And they were coming up with packages to incorporate him into the offense and signaling routes in from the sideline to kind of help him make it work. Can you do that in the pros? I think one underrated storyline on him for this week is how much he weighs. You know what I mean? Is he in the 170s or is he in the 190s? That's going to, play right into that durability question on whether or not he can hold up playing both ways. It's just, I don't know. I think when you and DJ are sitting up in that booth, on over the weekend, Rich, it's such a rich conversation. There's so much to it. I think he's the most interesting player, that I've covered, going into a Combine in 20 years covering the league.
Well, speaking to the same individuals that you spoke to, and McShay and Daniel, and obviously we had Dion on at the Super Bowl, and Mayock and others, and I'm just putting together the pieces here on Travis Hunter. The general sense is he's going to be a corner. That's where he's going to play all of his, snaps, with the exception of a package on offense. And then there's a question as to how large that package is And how many
Yep.
snaps? 6, 10, 15? And that's the general sense, because as Dion said, there's no way a coach in the NFL can have somebody who can take half the field away on defense and be the best playmaker on your offense standing next to you when the offense is out on the field. That is the way Travis Hunter is coming into this league. That's the general sense I'm getting on this front.
It really is crazy. And it's a great credit to the kid too. Obviously natural ability plays into this. There aren't that many people that can pull this off physically, if there have been any, in recent years. I also think, and this is something that like a lot of the guys who are on the road in the fall have said to me over the course of the last few months, like the level of conditioning and the level of mental toughness and mental focus and just, all those things that kind of fall under the heading of football character that it takes to pull off what he pulled off at Colorado the last 2 years is off the charts. We always talk about how like the interview is so important in getting to know the kid and trying to figure out who he is. This kid is almost like he doesn't have to do that. Just like, look at what I just pulled off. You know what I mean? You want to know how I'm going to fit in. You want to know what I'm willing to do for the team. You want to know how I condition and how I work. You want to know how locked in I am on the mental side of the game. Take a look. It's all right there. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's the part of it that Travis Hunter probably doesn't get enough credit for, is exactly what it takes beyond just physical ability to pull off what he just pulled off. Again, conditioning, mental toughness, mental focus, all of those things to do it and do it at the level he has is just mind blowing. And so someone's going to get a really good football player. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like his rookie year. I'd imagine maybe, like they kind of work it up, like it starts with a little on offense and a lot on defense, and then maybe you start to work up the offensive side of it. But I'm fascinated to see how it plays out.
So then which prospect that's available in the draft, Albert Breer, as we're winding down our conversation you had on your plane there, which prospect is the most likely to have somebody trade up to number 1 overall to give the Titans a Godfather package? What do you think?
You always default to the quarterbacks.
I know, but you got Abdul Carter and this unicorn we just been talking about.
I think it's Carter. I think it's probably Carter would be my guess. Like I've had people tell me he could run 4.3. You hesitate to use unique because he has a lot of and it's almost like Micah Parsons a couple of years ago launched a new genre of player, because people had such a hard time placing Micah Parsons. Like, okay, like he's a great edge rusher and he's a great off-ball linebacker, but how exactly do you use him? And then, as it turns out, over the last 4 years, we found out that dealing with him for an offense is an absolute nightmare. So now you see other players in college being used that way, and Abdul Carter is one of them. Jalen Walker from Georgia is another. Abdul, I think, is the one, though, because like if the Titans really badly want to get out of there, I don't know if they'll get the quarterback premium for the first pick, but Abdul Carter is like the type of player I think you can build a defense around and play such a premium position. And what we just saw in the Super Bowl is obviously a part of this too. We just saw what a great defensive line and great pass rushers can do for you. I still have it in the back of my head that it's Abdul Carter, because I do think like he's like he and Hunter are the two best players in the draft, I think. And I think there's a little bit of a gap after that. And, before you get to like the Mason Grahams and the Will Campbells and those guys. But I think like Carter's just an easier translation to the NFL. Like, what he's going to be when he gets to the league. Whereas with Hunter, there's a little bit more of a question.
Well, and the Browns already have one of those guys, right? And the question, as I let you go, is where does Myles Garrett stand right now, Albert?
The Browns haven't moved much off their spot, is my understanding. They've gotten calls. And look, like this week could change things, certainly. I do think one of the things that, is interesting about Myles Garrett's his plan of attack here is like that. Again, when they got it out there that the trade request had gone in, it had been in for about a week, and he'd reached a point of frustration where he felt like the right thing to do was to make it public because that could force the Browns' hand. And what it did for the Browns is it made it so they don't have to call anybody. right? Like all those calls are going to be incoming once Myles got that out there. So, I mean, I guess it's like I go back to my childhood watching WWF. Like it's like the $1 Million Man used to say, everybody's got a price. There's a price somewhere, I'm sure, for Myles Garrett. It's just I don't know where that price is, and whether or not somebody's going to reach that price. I do know that it's really, really high. And right now the Browns' stance with other teams has been that there is no price. But I think you and I both know, like there eventually could be a point where, you get to it and you say, okay, we won't have to redo a contract. This is a great player. We don't have a quarterback situation cleaned up completely yet. Maybe that's Kirk Cousins. Maybe that's somebody else. So, if somebody comes in and offers us 3 first-round picks or something crazy, do we have to think about it? Maybe they do. But as of right now, like their stance has been, his trade request doesn't change anything. We view him as a part of our team going forward.
Do you get a window seat so you can wave to Columbus as you fly over it, Albert?
Oh yeah. I might be able to see the new banner. You look kind of nice,
You walked into that one.
No flags no flags on that team though.
No.
On that field though. No flags anymore.
I don't know, Albert. There's the NHL is having they're having one of those outdoor
That's right,
games.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're in Columbus, the Crew versus the Red Wings. And if I'm the Red Wings, I bring one of those drills, that you drill to go ice fishing. Win the game and just go right to center ice. You know what I mean? That's what teams from Michigan do.
The Blue Jackets actually have I think 3 or 4 Michigan guys on their team.
Oh,
I think that's right.
That's smart. Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
It's smart.
I don't know where they are in the standings. You can look that up.
That's okay, Albert. We're all focused on a fascinating combine, to say the least, and I will see you.
Absolutely.
I'll see you soon in Indianapolis.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Rich.
Right back at you. That's Albert Breer, senior reporter for Sports Illustrated MMQB, and of course, part of Prime Video's Thursday Night Football. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.